Hello and welcome to Odds Premier League match day 15. We just finished match day 14 with Man United being crap again, playing at home against West Ham and not getting the 3 points. And we have ahead of us a great weekend with big football games, especially Tom, of course, Aston Villa, Arsenal.
Yeah, great weekend. It does sort of feel like the last weekend just finished. Oh, it did. A bit like Christmas. Premier League weekends come round quicker every year.
A lot of football, and we like it. It's been also a great midweek games, especially Fulham and City. I would highlight. So plenty of goals, plenty of things to analyze. Liverpool crisis, Man United crisis, and some other teams in the opposite, especially Aston Villa. So, okay, guys, stay with us, of course. Let me know your comments, your tips for this new weekend. And, of course, support us if you feel to do so. And now let's go on with the show. And another great game was in Brighton. Actually, Aston Villa won 4-3. What a game that one. And it's now 6 consecutive wins. For Aston Villa, it's 8 wins in the last 9 Premier League games. So this must be a massive game, a really good test for Arsenal. They bounced back, or they won again at home. An impressive, another day in the office, 2-0. But they got the job done, and Chelsea dropped points, Tom. But this is another level, and this is another test for Arteta's men.
Yeah, it's about as tough a test you can get in the Premier League right now that Arsenal are walking into this weekend. I think Villa have been incredible for the last few weeks. And look, I think they're incredible in an interesting way as well, in that it's not like they're the best football team in the country. It's not like they are playing this scintillating style of football, but they're just a really effective team. And that's always a hallmark of a Unai Emery team. They're not always the prettiest team to watch. They're certainly not an ugly team, but every single player is able to play at the peak of their capabilities for such a consistent period of time. You look at the form of John McGinn, the improvement in Ollie Watkins over the period of Emery's time, but also in the last couple of weeks, struggling with injury and fitness and form. And he's come back to something near his best against Brighton. You look at the partnership of Onana and Kamara in midfield, the improvements to Matty Cash and Konsa and all these guys. So individually, they've got better. They work as a fantastic collective. And it really isn't something to minimize that they went to Brighton, fell 2-0 down, and still find a way to win that game. Brighton are fantastic. And so to go there and do that was incredibly impressive. And this run of form, what's impressive about it too is all sorts of wins. So there's games where they're away from home and they're losing and they go on to win. There's games where they are comfortable and win 4-0, a la Bournemouth. There are games where it's very tight and it's a derby and sometimes things don't go their way. They still find ways to win. Wolves. There's games in Europe where they're struggling to find momentum, still find a way to win. Young boys. Like, that's been the story of it. They're finding ways to win. The confidence is there. The organisation is there. The only doubt going into this one is the goalkeeper. I think 𝗵𝗲𝗄 in goal is nowhere near the caliber of Emi Martinez, and that's not necessarily a massive slight on the new goalkeeper. Martinez is one of the best in the league, Golden Glove winner, whatever. So I think that's potentially a problem for Villa. But I do think that they look in really good shape to give Arsenal a massive test here. In terms of Arsenal, it's kind of been the same story across the season beyond the Tottenham game. Are they massively impressive? I don't think so. Similar to Aston Villa in lots of ways. Very, very effective, though. They just know how to win games, to close it out. If anyone was watching, so I had the option on in midweek on the Tuesday. There was like 6 games on TV, 5 games on TV. If anyone chose the Arsenal-Brentford game to watch who doesn't support Arsenal or Brentford, I would suggest there is something wrong with you. Because Arsenal games are not necessarily watchable in that way, but you just know they're going to find a way to win. The only doubt you've got now about Arsenal, or one has about Arsenal, is the injuries are racking up. Gabriel, Saliba. Mosquera picked up an injury, so that means it'll be, I guess, Jurrien Timber or Ben White at the heart of defence with the other one going to fullback. It leaves you at not bare-boned. It's still a pretty decent lineup, but the best defensive pairing in this league is Gabriel and Saliba. So anyway, that those two are not together, you are going to have problems. So something to worry about there for Arsenal defensively, especially when you consider Morgan Rogers running at you if they get the wrong side of 𝗀𝗵𝗵. If Rice isn't fit enough to play, I think he is going to be fit enough to play, but in case he isn't, Morgan Rogers against 𝗀𝗵𝗵, it could be a real mismatch. Onana and Kamara would have the power advantage if Declan Rice is not playing for Arsenal. Again, I read this morning Rice in the press saying that he should be fit. That'll make a massive difference. No Rice, no Gabriel, no Saliba. You start to change what your bet could be here. And going forward, Merino keeps on scoring consistently. He is very effective, and he's keeping a now fit 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 out of the team. So really intriguing this, and I wouldn't be surprised if any result happened. I think all results are possible. What I would suggest is it's going to be quite a close game. I don't see either team going all out to attack. I don't see either team scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. I don't think it will be a Fulham Man City scenario. I'd be looking at Arsenal 2, Brentford 0, Villa 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 0. I think chance will be at a premium. I think defense is likely to be on top, which means the draw at 3.63 is really, really interesting. 0-0 or 1-1. Potential scorelines here. It's going to be very, very tight. If Arsenal win it, you know what I'm going to say. It came in again on Tuesday, and so why not bet again? If Arsenal win, they do it without conceding a goal. My confidence isn't quite there because of the Saliba-Gabriel effect, but still, when Arsenal win games, they usually keep it very, very tight. Arsenal win to 0, comes in at double your money, and if you feel like you want to bet on a few scores, 1-0 or 2-0, I think are most likely. Throw that in a group with 3-0. That's also double your money at 3.25. Looks like a draw. Consider double chance, Villa and draw. For me, low-scoring Arsenal win.
Actually, our smart bet is suggesting double chance for Aston Villa, 1.95. First team to score, Aston Villa, and both teams to score. Yes, this is the AI, our smart bet, and a lot of different comments. Actually, this is a very close game indeed. Eric, Arsenal win. Arpit, Villa, double chance, and both teams to score. Draw game for some others. Of course, Unai Emery against his former team. So this is a massive game, massive test for the leaders. And then we have Bournemouth, Chelsea. You've been mentioning this in this show that Chelsea had a good 11, but the squad is not strong enough to be in so many competitions. Maresca did some turnover after the effort against Arsenal, and they paid it against Leeds. It was a massive blow after getting that draw against Chelsea, against Arsenal, and showing that they can compete against everyone, as they did also against Barcelona in the Champions League. And Bournemouth, Tom, they are really in bad form. It's 1 point in the last 5. Very unlucky, I have to say, against Everton, though.
Yeah, they were, but the trouble is that when you're on a bad run, these sorts of things happen to you, and it's how you get out of it. And when you're a team like Bournemouth, who have overperformed the quality of the players for quite some time, when the dip then happens, there isn't like someone you can give the ball to dig you out. Like, for example, I don't know, when West Ham are struggling, they give the ball to 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗲 and they can be saved in some way. When ����𝐿 was at Wolves, get the ball to 𝗀𝐿 and he can save them in some way. Who's doing that for Bournemouth? You might say Semenyo, but he's on terrible form right now, and I'm not massively convinced of his qualities compared to the two players I've just mentioned. I think he seems like he was at the right club at the right time. We'll see how that goes when he moves, maybe in January. But offensively, they are struggling. And defensively, when you lose players of the quality of Howson and Sabani and Kirkesh and Kepa on his form from last season, we thought there would be a drop-off. At the start of the season, there wasn't. Now, clearly, there is. 𝗵𝗇, 𝗛𝗏𝗏 keep getting totally exposed. 𝗵𝗏 is struggling defensively. Adams and Scott look very good going forward, but they're not providing enough protection. And because they're so all-action, I think they need to maybe dig out a 0-0 draw, dig out a couple of results by playing quite negative, sort of low-block 𝗙ichi football. They aren't going to do that. And so this run may continue for a few more weeks before more favourable opponents come along to the Vitality and they get some wins. They're not going to go down this season, Bournemouth, so why not give that a go? But I do wonder how they approach this game, considering the bad form they have been on. In terms of Chelsea, you made the point there. They haven't got a great squad in terms of squad depth of really top win-the-league quality. So any change in the strongest starting 11 is going to have a massive effect. Losing Caicedo to suspension had a massive effect against Leeds. And it's such a young squad. There isn't many senior players there. And I wonder how many knew about the rivalry between Leeds and Chelsea. I wonder if how many people knew about the ferocity of Ellen Road when Leeds are winning in the opening 10 minutes. It didn't seem like many did, and they wilted in the game midweek. I think not playing Fofana because they can't for 2 games in a row was massive. I think having Chalobah at fullback inexplicably, Ellen Road was ridiculous. I think just the sheer amount of changes made no sense. They tried to get back in the game, but at 2-1, they might have got something from it. And Tosin, who's nowhere near good enough to play for Chelsea, has a massive howler. Sanchez then compounds that by not realising the danger. Leeds go on to win the game. So it was a mix of the squad not being good enough, the players not being old enough, and Maresca making too many changes and not assessing the game as well as he should. So really tricky one, this. But I do think that Chelsea will bring back their strongest possible team. They will know that it was a real howler in midweek and they can't drop too many more of those. I expect Reece James to be back in midfield as he was fantastic against Arsenal alongside probably Andre Santos and Enzo Fernandez. I expect there to be João Pedro back up front. I expect Neto on one wing and probably 𝗛𝗏𝗏 on the other. And I expect Chelsea to be back towards what we saw against Barcelona, what we saw against Burnley, what we saw against Wolves. For Bournemouth, I just think the form isn't good enough to back them right now. And at 2.23, Chelsea just to win is irresistible. And then I'll be looking at this game to be quite tight. If you look at the run of Bournemouth games and run of Chelsea games, both teams to score has been a regular feature of their games across the last 5, certainly last 2 for Chelsea. So look at that market. I think it's going to be tight. Exactly 1 goal Chelsea win brings you in at 4, which is really, really good, I think.
Well, we have Chelsea to win. James, Chelsea with no confidence, 2.2 is value, 2.2 in Chelsea to win, indeed. If Maresca put the best team, indeed, there is value. João Pedro, anytime goal scorer, where they are visiting Bergamo, playing against Atalanta in the Champions League. Next one is Everton Forest. Tom, you mentioned Jack Grealish, and he scored. Very lucky. It wouldn't be a goal if there wasn't a deflection, but he scored the winner for Everton, winning away, shocking us against Man United and Bournemouth, and losing at home, last one against Newcastle, but overall it's 3 wins in the last 4, so not bad. And for Forest, it was a massive win. 𝐿𝐵𝐺𝐸sus, a player that I really like, scored against Wolves. Massive win. It's 3 wins in the last 4 to get safer in the table.
Yeah, look, really good run of form for Forest. And I never felt they would go down. And I still don't think they will go down. I think the squad's too good for that. And I think Sean Dyche is too clever for that. And he's also come into a squad as built by Nuno and previously Steve Cooper, who were never going to play Postecoglou ball. They were always going to be mid to low block. They were always going to be powerful through midfield and look to hit on the counter. And trying to do something different with them was kind of wild from Postecoglou. It's why it didn't work so well. In terms of Everton, I think they played well at Bournemouth, so I don't want to discredit that. But I do think the issues that have been long-standing remain. Firstly, the pace on the counter isn't quite there for what David Moyes would want to do. I think that 𝗀𝗏𝗏 has had some good moments. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has some good moments. Dewsbury Hall dropping deeper to replace the suspended 𝗀𝗏𝗏 has made more sense. They've had more energy in there. But there's a lack of pace about Everton. They're a very slow, aging-looking team. And I think at times that catches them out. Plus, of course, they haven't got a striker of any great quality in Beto or Barry. They're just 2 guys that you would not bet on to score the chance if it came around. So they're a slow team. All their games are a bit tough to watch. But I do think if they score the first goal, as shown against Bournemouth and shown against Man United, you're in serious trouble. And Fulham as well, because they're just so well organised. They are so well drilled. They've got a bunch of Sean Dyche, David Moyes disciples in their team who know how to do their jobs. Scoring the goals is the problem. But when that's done, I would hate to be trailing against Everton. That'd be a torrid time. I feel the same about Forest as well. I think that this game absolutely screams draw and screams 0-0. I think we've seen that this season at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, that games have been a bit uninspiring, a bit flat. They don't really have, beyond Grealish, someone to provide a bit of magic spark for this team. And 𝗀𝗏𝗏, I guess you throw in there as well. But it seems to be one or the other, to be fair. It's been 𝗀𝗏𝗏 more recently than Grealish. But I think, again, 2 low blocks, 2 teams that do not want the ball, 2 teams that move it quite slowly, 2 teams that I think are going to rely on set pieces. I think the first goal is going to be absolutely critical in this game. If the first goal goes to either of these teams, to level it is going to be a real task. So draw at 3.37, I think is well worth a bet. Double up 0-0 or 1-1 at 4. I quite like that as well. Looking at Bournemouth, Everton 0-1, Wolves, Forest 0-1. I'd follow that sort of pattern. Everton under 2.5 goals is really, really generous 4.5. Forest at under 2.5, a generous 6.5. Low scoring win either way, delivers big here. So that's where my punt's going to be.
Marco also doesn't see many goals, under 1.5 goals, both teams to score. No, screams draw. Indeed, under 2.5 goals. Well, let's try to look for more fun, and I think we can see it in Manchester. Man City, Sunderland, what a game this one. Sunderland very, very dangerous, as we saw at Anfield again. Even they had the winner in their hands in the very last minute, but remember, they beat Chelsea, they drew with Arsenal, they drew at Anfield, so why not doing against this Man City, Tom, that they switch off again? It was a convincing win against Fulham with Foden directing the team, but as it happened against Leeds, it looks like they switch off to rest, or I don't know what is going on there.
Yeah, it's an evident switch off, though. I think that's the right way to put it, and I think that there's a lot of talk this week about 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐳 and what to do without him when he's not on the field. And when you consider he is the backup to Rodri, or maybe the backup to 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻, who's the backup to Rodri, who are both unavailable, there's a problem there for Man City because they're getting run through in central midfield in a way they've not been in many, many years since the signing of Rodri, 5-6 years ago, whatever it was. But offensively, looking very good, looking really good. 3 and 5 goals in the last 2 games should scare everyone. It should scare Sunderland. Haaland scoring again, 100 Premier League goals. Doku was really threatening, I thought, at Craven Cottage. Foden's played really well last couple of games. Reinders getting forward into the attack where they want him to be. Looked good last couple of games. So City are going to score here. They're definitely going to score in this game, at least 1. If they get 2, then Sunderland are in serious trouble. I would hope they've learned the lessons of being 2-0 up and trying to close the game out from the last couple of matches, City. We shall see. From an entertainment perspective, I hope they haven't. But I certainly think that City are well worth at least 1 goal here in this game. And if they want to see it through and have the ability to see it through, they will. Hard to resist a bet on Sunderland here, though. The odds are massive. And they've won at Chelsea this season. They should have won at Anfield in midweek. And as you mentioned, that clearance of the line from 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻 is the only reason they didn't. It's a total free hit for Sunderland. It's beyond no pressure for the Black Cats at this moment in time. It's actually fun for them to play. They're having a wonderful time in the Premier League. Isidore's enjoying it. Traore looks happy. Xhaka looks phenomenal. Siddiqui looks really good. Ballard, loving being a Premier League player. Roofs has been amazing, both as a goalkeeper and as a distributor of the ball as well this season. So, look, I think firstly, you've got to take the City win because I think it's one of the safest bets you're going to have in the Premier League. It's going to happen 30 times this season, so you look at that. City win and Haaland scores. Also worth a bet every single week, considering that it keeps on happening. Only 1.87, but well worth it if you put something else in. Then we get to the fun stuff. The draw, considering they've just drawn at Anfield, and Fulham could have got a draw against City, and then there was Leeds previously. 6.75 for just a draw in this game. Really, really interesting. Double chance draw and Sunderland. I think this could be an irresistible bet here at 4.2. Sunderland have got lots of big results. They've got points at big grounds. We know City are conceding goals. And look, City are going to win 30 bets, but I do think there's 8 games they won't win this season. This looks like it may well be one of them. And a 4.2, that's well worth a little go.
Well, or the Asian handicap, indeed. Someone was saying Asian handicap +1 or +2 for Sunderland is also a good option if they don't get thrashed in Manchester. We have Poha saying that Xhaka and Siddiqui will boss the middle of the park since Rodri and Kovacic are out. The crazy odds throw both teams to score. Actually, if we check our smart bet, is going for both teams to score. Yes, it's very good. It's 2.05, considering also how weak Man City are defensively. Total goals over 2.5 goals is 1.5. The odds are not as good, but both teams to score, Asian handicap plus something for Sunderland is good, as Marco is telling us. By the way, Manchester traveling to the Bernabeu on Wednesday, massive game. So perhaps also Guardiola, with so many games, save some players who know, since he loves beating Real Madrid. The next one should be an easy one here for your ACCA, Newcastle, Burnley. Although Newcastle had a really poor management, the game management was really poor against Tottenham. They should have won the game, even with the dodgy penalty, but they had a lot of chances to win the game, and at the end was 𝐿𝐿𝐷𝗲𝗏𝗏 bicycle kick, drawing it, and Burnley, Tom, going down and down. Now it's 5 defeats in a row.
Yeah, look, let's start with Newcastle, who I was surprised about their performance against Tottenham, I've got to say. I think that they really struggled to break down the Spurs low block. They kept getting caught a lot on the break. I think Kudus kept getting at the fullback, Hall, quite a lot. And Hall was struggling on his return from a long layoff to really cope with Kudus and the Spurs attack. So that surprised me a bit. I also think as well that Aaron Ramsdale is in for the injured Pope, and there'd been some talk from Newcastle people that maybe that replacement should happen permanently. I'm not convinced on Aaron Ramsdale. He seems chaotic. He's always seemed chaotic to me. I think he was pretty poor for the Romero bicycle kick / P-roller equaliser a couple of days ago. And so I'd have my doubts about him. But look, I think that the rotation's been obvious for Newcastle. Eddie Howe has realised that he can't just keep flogging Bruno Guimaraes, Joelinton and Tonali every single minute of every single game. And if he drops all 3 of them, the drop-off is too massive. So he's playing like half Miley, half Bruno, half Miley, half Tonali, and a bit of Joe Willock in that mix as well. And that makes sense to get through this period. I wouldn't imagine that continuing beyond February, but I do think we'll see that for the next 2 months or so. And look, I like Lewis Miley. He's a good young player, and he proved it at Hill Dickinson a couple of weeks ago, but he's not Bruno Guimaraes, right? So the drop-off's always going to be there. And that is the only hope I have for Burnley, that maybe the Newcastle midfield 3 is not on their best. Beyond that, I can't see anything in this Burnley team. I've said it for some weeks. I think that 𝗛𝗏𝗏 and 𝗀𝗏𝗏 are not good enough. I think Kyle Walker has passed his best. I think that there's some nice little players in there in Cullen and Florentino. If 𝐿𝐿𝐷𝗏𝗏𝗀 can stop trying to kick people and just be the worst player in the world for a few minutes, like he can actually play some football if he stops kicking people. So they've got some nice players in there, but it's all championship. It's a championship squad. They're going to struggle for 30 points. I think that they're going to be in 19th this season with Wolves bottom, and I just can't, in good conscience, back them to win a game like this. I think Newcastle, at their best, win this reasonably comfortably, so they are my safe bet of the weekend, and to win it at 1.33. To win to 0 is 2. Again, I'm struggling to find goal scorers at Burnley. Didn't score against Palace, 1 against Brentford, didn't score against Chelsea, 2 against West Ham. 1 was a consolation, to be fair, and didn't score against Arsenal. So not big goal scorers. Arsenal Newcastle even proved that they are able to keep clean sheets as well recently. So win to 0 is 2. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 direct score lines, 2.63. Then look at your handicaps. Minus 1.5 at 1.8. It's not great. I think in a bet on this game, you go for a big Newcastle win. Minus 2.5 is really good at 3.25. You add 𝐿𝐷𝗏𝗏𝗏 or Barnes, 2 goal scorers in form, and you'll make some real money here. So one of those to score, Newcastle to score at least 2, I'd say 3.
Also, 𝐶𝐿𝐷𝗏𝗏𝗏, Newcastle 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, Timothy over 1.5 goals. Let's go to the next one. Cuti Romero in a bombastic way. What both goals. The second one, I'm not sure if it's a good goal or not, actually, but the header is a really good header. Actually, but this game, Tom, the Thomas Frank derby, is a nightmare, I think, for bettors. We have Brentford, so bad away from home. It's only 1 win and 6 defeats this season. Lost to Arsenal, as we know, and Tottenham so poor at home. They've collected only 5 points. It's impossible, I would say, to back them in the current form. So this one is tough. Perhaps this could be another draw, a good option for the draw.
The good news on this is that if you do back a winner, both teams, their form home and away is so bad, the odds are quite good. So if you have a gut feeling for either of these teams, absolutely go for it. Brentford at 3.25, I think is irresistible here. I mean, look, the Tottenham conversation has not moved on for the last few weeks. I think that they are clearly a team of good organisation. They are clearly a team who know how to defend. They are clearly a team with a game plan. The trouble is they don't necessarily have the players to effectuate that game plan in games. They're missing a striker. Richarlison has had some good moments, some bad moments, some indifferent moments. He's not quite good enough to play for Tottenham where they are. If they could have 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐻𝐿 Spurs, I think I'd be very happy to have him instead. Solanke's long-term injury has been a problem, though I'm not convinced he's a Thomas Frank player. And then they just keep swapping all the wingers. Beyond Kudus, no one's really done anything this season for Spurs. Johnson or Simons or Kolomuani or Tell. Yeah, they've had some flashes, but I don't know what the Spurs front group is. I don't know what the best lineup is. And I think Thomas Frank doesn't either, considering how much he seems to change it week in, week out. I think there's a couple of outstanding players in Romero, in 𝗵𝗵𝗄, and probably Kudus. Beyond that, there's no one really at Spurs who's particularly covered themselves in glory this season. And to not have that creativity on the ball when the game slows down at home, it keeps costing them over and over and over again. They need that element of chaos in games to get in behind and score, because that's how all of their players like to play. In terms of Brentford, away form has been dreadful beyond the win at West Ham a few weeks ago, and we've discussed that at length before. So much of that was down to whatever the hell Nuno was doing that day. But they have two or three tactics. I said two for recent weeks. There's now clearly a third. First one, over the top from Jordan Henderson. Second one, long throw from 𝐿𝐴. Third one, win a penalty. The most amount of penalties awarded to any team this season has been Brentford. Most of those, all but one, I think, scored by Igor Thiago, who has been fantastic in lots of ways, scored some great goals from open play, but his penalties beyond the late miss against Brighton have all been pretty consistent, pretty good, and really effective for the Bees this season. So pick your winner here, going on your gut. I would suggest that Tottenham's home form is not worth betting on. The fact is a Thomas Frank derby, formerly at Brentford, now at Tottenham. Gut feeling for me is Brentford go there and win at 3.25. Following a similar sort of storyline to the Fulham result. Wolves got a 1-1 draw there. Man United got a 2-2 draw there. I don't think Tottenham at the moment know how to get over the line, or at least I wouldn't be betting on them to go over the line. I also think that following the Fulham result, Brentford will start this game well. Brentford winning at halftime or full time is 2.38, which I think is really, really nice. I can see them with a nice halftime lead. I was looking at the breakdown of minutes here as well. Brentford winning after 30 is 4.33. Just going on the Tottenham games, again, the Man United match, the Fulham match, the Wolves game, they're starting really slowly, Tottenham, and keep getting caught. So Brentford winning after half an hour, I think, is really, really nice. And that's a bet I'll definitely be having this weekend. And then if someone scored 11 goals in the Premier League this season, you always bet on them. Igor, Thiago, anytime, 2.5, also nice. So lots of really good Brentford bets there. Sorry, Tottenham fans.
Indeed, two unbackable teams. Konats is saying, I don't trust this game. Really hard. I think the draw is also a really good option. Also, 𝗵𝗵𝗄 going for the draw in this one. And the last game on Saturday is Leeds Liverpool. Massive game. This one for Liverpool after another poor performance. Another poor performance of Van Dijk. He's been so poor. I don't know what he was doing in the goal scored by Sunderland. So the win against West Ham, as we imagine, it was more because West Ham are really bad at the moment than that because Liverpool was good, and it could be a tough game. This one, Tom, at least is a warning for Liverpool what happened to Chelsea. If they go into Elland Road not 100%, they might lose again.
Yeah, and I think that Leeds last season were a team that played three at the back quite a lot. And Daniel Farke has not done that this season. And I've been quite surprised. And we saw against Chelsea. Chelsea were very poor, but Leeds were very good. They went back to the three at the back with 𝐵𝗒𝗋, Rodon, and Strijk. And I thought that three played really well, certainly in the first half against Chelsea. I think that they have got some injuries in midfield and some issues, which has meant that 𝗀𝗄𝗄 and Ampadu and Tanaka have played, and they're hard workers, but they don't have the pace and power of Stark and Longstaff, who'd been so good at the start of this season. So they've changed the way they play because they've lost the pace in midfield, and it worked out for them brilliantly against Chelsea. And also, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a player we've spoken about for a long, long time, and he is someone that could have been England's number 9 for a decade. Unfortunately for him, injuries put paid to that, but he's incredibly experienced and has become a real battering ram of a player. He's so alert, he's so experienced, and if fit, can be impactful in games. We're not talking about a 10, 15 goal striker. we're talking about someone who's going to score 7 to 9, but will be involved in a 7 to 9 other goals this season. Someone's looking at him, or he's being marked, and so someone else gets some space, or his battering challenge or flick on led to a goal. So I think they've got that. I think 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝑝𝐿's great. I think the 3 at the back looks better, and I think the midfield balance looks better with the 3 at the back. So a real chance here for Leeds. Plus, of course, when you've got home wins against Chelsea and West Ham in the last 3 home games, they've won 2 of them. And in one of the other home games against Villa, they gave Villa a great game. They're going to be massively in this one. And if Liverpool ain't up for it, Leeds will win it. And I wouldn't discount it at 4.33 that Leeds can win it. With Liverpool, I don't think anyone really thought they were back against West Ham. I think the first goal was always going to be critical in that game. And I think then the 𝗵𝗵𝗃 sending off led to the second goal. I'm not sure they would have got one. It changes everything, 𝗵𝗵𝗃 being sent off in that game. And we saw against Sunderland too. Again, not quite back Liverpool. There is some spice missing. To have to bring on Salah at half-time, I think, was an admission that the new way of playing isn't quite there as yet for Arne Slot. But I do think 𝗵𝗃's had 2 really good games in a row, which I think will make a massive difference. I think it's evident that Isak is now as fit as he's going to get. And so all he needs now is minutes. The only thing that's going to make him sharper is playing football. So the 𝗵𝗃's-Isak pairing, I think, is going to be critical in a game like this. I think that you basically know the team already. 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐻 will stay at fullback. I think 𝐷𝗵𝗏𝗏, McAllister, Szoboszlai midfield. And they will look to overpower. And again, a bit like the West Ham game, a bit like the Sunderland game, I think the first goal is going to be absolutely critical. We're already at the stage now where Liverpool can't afford to lose any more games. They certainly can't afford to lose games like this. And I think first goal wins it. So I'm going to say Liverpool. I think it'll be quite similar to the West Ham game in lots of ways. Liverpool win 1.86. Again, don't discount Leeds because the odds are so good. And they've beaten Chelsea at West Ham in 2 of their last 3. But I would go for Liverpool at 1.86. Liverpool by exactly 1 goal is 3.75. And I also wouldn't discount a very similar pattern to the Aston Villa game, or indeed the Chelsea game, that Leeds score an early goal, and we spend the rest of the game with the away side trying to get back into it. Liverpool win, both teams to score 3.25. Screams another Villa. Leeds 1, Liverpool 2 for me.
Super Saturday in the Premier League. All the big guns playing on Saturday. Here, both teams to score. The last common Liverpool win, 𝗲𝗏 to score. Still has to score because the last goal came with a deflection, so it doesn't count. Leeds double chance. And actually, if we check our website and we check our smart bet tool, it goes for double chance indeed. For Leeds, odds over 2.0. First team to score, Leeds, 2.6. You mentioned the first scorer win the game, over 2.5 goals. These are the bets. I'm sure we are going to see a lot of surprises this Saturday in the Premier League. And for Sunday, less exciting, but still, perhaps you want to place your bets in Brighton. West Ham, I guess you have to check Brighton to win, is 1.6 after that crazy game against Aston Villa. You mentioned how they were 2-0 up after beating also Forest and Brentford. And West Ham, Tom, struggling, I guess, is very positive. The draw against Man United because no one expected it, but they are back in the bottom 3 right now, so some pressure on Nuno.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be Leeds or West Ham for 18th, and that's going to be an ongoing conversation across the season. But, I mean, let's start with Brighton, who I can't believe they lost that game in midweek, and I think that Fabian Ħartzler probably can't either. So much of their brilliant form before that had been built on being miserly defensively. No goals conceded Leeds, no goals conceded Palace, one against Brentford, clean sheet Forest. So the form did not suggest they were about to concede 4 goals at home and lose by 3-4. Just one of those Premier League nights, I guess. So if we take that as the outlier, the form still shows you a really solid team. The midfield of Ayari, if fit, or Baleba and Gomez has been fantastic across the season. Danny Welbeck, 7 goals this campaign, including some really good finishes. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 has been one of the most impressive, underrated players in the Premier League this campaign. He's come in to replace the injured Mitoma and has really carried the fight forward for Brighton in so many games. Van Hecke and Dunk have contributed at both ends. And so, yeah, look, they're still a solid team. I don't expect another 3-4 in this game. And I think a Brighton win is obviously where you go for a team that's looking for a top 6 finish this campaign. In terms of West Ham, 1 defeat in the last 5 is pretty good, actually, considering where they were. I think Nuno has evidently made them harder to beat. There are individuals who have improved, including Todibo and Potts and Magassa. and one or two others. I think that they were well worth their draw at Old Trafford. They were well worth their draw at Bournemouth, and beyond the Liverpool game, where the game plan's always the same for Nuno, I think. But beyond the 𝗵𝗫𝗀 sending off, I think the game plan pretty went off as planned, and they plan to try and get back in the game in the final 10, as they did at Old Trafford in midweek, and they'll do it again here. It'll be a mid to low block. Really impressed by Magassa in midweek. Been impressed by Potts for weeks. If we can get a midfield three for West Ham of Fernandes, Potts, and Magassa, with 𝗵𝗫𝗀 coming back in after suspension for 𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜, I guess. Front three of Bowen, Wilson, and 𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜. If Wilson can get through the hour that he needs. Look, West Ham could get a draw here. They'll play for a draw. They could get a draw. Don't discount the draw at 4.5. Don't discount a 1-1 draw, which is what the score was at Old Trafford. So not my top tip. I'd obviously go for the Brighton win at 1.61. And if they score one, I would expect Brighton to score a second, maybe a third. So a Brighton win at minus 1.5 at 2.5 is quite nice. If you're looking at the West Ham results, look at draw, maybe even double chance it. But a 1-1 draw is really high on potential outcomes here. In terms of individuals, Danny Welbeck with 7 goals. Any time for him is 2.4. So, you know, I'd still favour Brighton. They've got a good record against West Ham as well. But West Ham they look tough to beat at the moment, which is what you'd expect from a Nuno team.
Is Paquetá playing?
Yeah, one game ban. It was 2 yellows, so he should be back.
Unfortunately for you.
Well, it's the cupboard's a bit bare, so you know what you're gonna do.
Brighton to win. Konats, Welbeck, anytime goal scorer. I guess Welbeck is Welbeck. Anytime goal scorer, and both teams to score for Timothy. And the other game on Sunday is Fulham. Crystal Palace, Fulham, that crazy game against Man City, 4-5, even with a chance to draw. They showed, of course, some pride in the game. Before that, beat Tottenham and Sunderland, so they are comfortable in the middle of the table. And Crystal Palace beat Burnley, as we all expected. Tom, two teams indeed in the middle of the table. Well, Crystal Palace actually in European spots. Tough one, this one. Also, the bookies are pointing to the draw.
It's going to be tight. It's going to be a tight game, no doubt about that. When you look at the score lines that Palace have picked up recently, 1-0 win, 2-1 loss, 2-1 loss, 2-0 victory. You look at the Fulham games beyond the 4-5, 1-2, 1-0, 2-0. You know, these are two teams that are ultra competitive. They are two teams that are more than capable of winning any Premier League game they are in, but don't quite have the ability to win with the consistency that puts them in a sort of title race framing. But these are two very solid mid-table teams. One of them, couldn't tell you which one, maybe Palace, but could be Fulham, will have European aspirations, or at least to be in the battle for European qualification this season. I mean, let's start with Fulham. Their issue has been dynamism going forward, I think, in recent weeks. 𝗻𝐿𝐴𝐵 dropped a bit deeper to try and give another attacking player on the field. And it has worked. Certainly worked in the game against Tottenham. Certainly worked against Sunderland. Didn't do it against Man City. Maybe it cost them before they went ultra-attacking in the second half, where 𝗀𝐿𝐴𝐵 finally sort of landed in the Premier League with a brilliant second-half performance. So if he can find the right combination, Marco Silva, of Wilson and 𝗻𝐿𝐴𝐵 and 𝗀𝐿𝐴𝐵 and even Kevin alongside Jimenez, who's the only fit striker, they can and will score goals consistently. The trouble is, when you have the 5 offensive players, there's a lack of protection for a pretty slow backline in 𝗵𝗲𝗄 and Anderson. 𝗵𝗲𝗄's really struggled this season, somewhat surprisingly. Without 𝗀𝐿𝐴𝐵 and Berg in front of them, there is gaps to exploit, as proved by Spurs and as proved by Man City, obviously, a couple of days ago. So, good team. I expect them to score at least 1 goal in this game. Similar story to Crystal Palace, who went to Burnley and won in a really hard-fought match. Lost against United, really hard-fought match. Won at Wolves, hard-fought match. They are not a team that are going to score 2, 3, 4, 5 goals on you. They're not a particularly thrilling team in that way, but they are so effective. It's an effective season this season. They lose a player in midfield, they can replace him with Jefferson Lerma. They lose Ismaila Sarr, they can bring in 𝗀𝗻𝗻𝗄. They just have great squad depth. Crystal Palace, everyone knows what they're doing. And who was injured the other week, a couple of weeks ago, it was Chris Richards, I think, and they brought 𝗀𝗻𝗄 in. You didn't really notice. Like, defense should be all fit. Richards, 𝗻𝗻𝗄, and 𝗀𝗻𝗄. That's really tough to break down. Wharton, I think, is one of the best players in the league and should be going to the World Cup with England. Daniel Munoz is a threat at both ends in terms of brilliant defensively, great offensively. He scores the winner against Burnley a couple of days ago. Tricky one, this. I think low scoring either way. Draw will be the top tip at 3.42. Screams a 1-1 draw, frankly. If you're going to pick a winner, I would say Palace are better than Fulham, and 2.9 is really, really good. And then I did find Daniel Munoz anytime. Like, he is so effective in the box. 3 goals so far in the Premier League this season and 2 assists. Munoz anytime is 8.5. He scored in, I think, a fifth of their games this season. So an anytime goal scorer at those sorts of odds for a man who's one of the top scorers, but for any team, he's the same amount of goals from fullback as Wilson, who's Fulham's top scorer. So I quite like that. Tight game, 1-1, 2-1 either way. I'd shade for Palace.
PC saying Daniel Munoz is really good indeed.
Yeah.
I think Palace are tired. Fulham are playing well. I can see draw both teams to score, of course. With European competitions, the schedule is really, really tough for Palace. Palace screams 5-4 for Palace. This is not a hockey game. This is football, but who knows? And for Monday, we have Wolves, Man United. I think it's better to put a movie, Tom, watch a series or something like this than watch this game. We cannot watch Wolves. We cannot watch Man United. Every time they get a good result, immediately they get 2 bad results. It's impossible. This team, they should be, I think, with 5 points more, the ones that they dropped recently against West Ham or Everton in European spots, even level on points with Aston Villa, but still they are 8th in the table because it's impossible to trust this Man United. Perhaps it's the time for Wolves to get another point. Who knows?
No, I don't think so. I just think Wolves are really bad, and I think there is such a dark cloud over the club at this moment in time that Rob Edwards should never have taken this job. They're going to struggle for 15 points this season, which the only target now for Wolves is to avoid being the worst team in Premier League history. And this is what happens when you circle the plug hole for years and years and years, don't realise that's happening, and invest poorly in the team you've got. There was no point replacing Vitor Pereira with Rob Edwards. There was no benefit to that for Edwards or for Wolves. And the issues remain consistent. The players aren't good enough. The goalkeepers aren't good enough. The midfield hasn't got enough power. Strant Larsen's not scoring. They haven't got much creativity. And I don't know. What else can you say, really? There's a mentality thing now. You know, losing is a habit, as the old saying goes. They've got that habit. They're finding ways to lose. Played well against Villa. What was the score? They lost. Had some good moments a couple of days ago against Forest. What was the score? They lost. Haven't scored a goal in God knows how long. I think it was maybe October, the last time Wolverhampton Wanderers scored a goal. 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, 1-0, 1-0. I'd have to trawl back further to find it. But like they can't score. They can't defend. They can't win. Even Man United, who have a penchant for throwing games in the bin that they should win, surely will be able to get the 3 points here. And of course, you have the added element of 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿, who looked a bit out of sorts, I thought, against West Ham on Thursday. But he is someone who will go back to Molineux and score. You see it all the time. That's one of the safest bets of the weekend. I do think that defensively, United looked a bit ropey against West Ham. No Maguire, no De Ligt. Not a big fan of Heaven playing in the Premier League right now. Not a big fan of Mazraoui in the back three. Not sure that worked. So for Man United's sake, they'll hope that more senior defenders are fit. Maybe bring 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿 back in, understandably dropped, but he's a proper defender as opposed to Mazraoui in that position. And maybe Lisandro Martinez, who's back fit again, might be able to play. But look, Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, good pairing, and 𝗵𝗿𝗄, 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿 have worked quite well in recent weeks. Dalot and Ahmad look good at wing back, and United will go there and win. So United at 1.83, take that. I think a couple of goals for United at least. A 1.5 handicap is double your money, which I think is really interesting. 2.99 I found it at, so basically 3. So I'd certainly be looking at least 2-0 to Man United. I mentioned they haven't scored since November, so go United win to 0 at 3.25. And as ever, when a star player goes back to the team they've just left, you bet on them to score. 𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿 anytime, 2.63.
26th of October, Tom, in
Wow.
the defeat against Burnley, indeed. Then they scored also in the League Cup in another defeat against Chelsea, but indeed they haven't scored a single goal
Crazy.
in November. Both teams to score. Man United win for Skylight. Well, taking consideration that Wolves are not scoring. Who will get sacked first, Tom, Amorim, or Slot? Probably none of them, I would say, this season.
Both seeing the season out with ease. No, I'm not sure there's going to be another sacking in the Premier League this season. I think Daniel Farke's kept his job with the win over Chelsea. And beyond that, everyone else has sacked the manager they're going to sack. So I think we are where we are now.
Well, this is it. We managed to do our video Premier League match day 15, even with some technological issues. Remember, guys, that you can participate in our tipster competition, some money to be made there. And we have a Premier League one, as you can see. And also check out Rivals and create your own tipster competition. Could be fun. Challenge your friends and even win some money. Tom, safe bet?
Yeah, tricky week, but I think Newcastle to beat beleaguered Burnley at home is the safest bet of this round, 1.33.
And your ACCA?
Treble, as usual, Newcastle to beat Burnley. I will take Brighton to nudge it over West Ham, and I'll take Man United to beat bottom of the table Wolverhampton Wanderers. A treble at 3.29.
Tom Rennie, Mr. Tom Rennie, it's been a pleasure seeing you also on a Friday morning for you. So I hope you have a really good weekend. I hope the same for everyone, and see you Monday. Bye-bye.